All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Unlicensed. You know that we are doing all of our episodes in person this season. So if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Jill. I am the host of Unlicensed, and this is the podcast where real women write in anonymously about anything that they want advice on. If your boss is giving you a hard time at work and you need advice on how to advocate for yourself or make more money, if you're having a hard time with a friend and you're thinking, what if I confront this friend and we are no longer friends, and you need help with advice about confronting a friend and having healthy communication skills. If you are dating someone and you're in a situationship and you're thinking to yourself, I need to get the fuck out of this, we literally cover it all. I am so excited for today's episode, guys. As you know, we have guests in all of our episodes, all female guests, and today we are joined by Imani Hines. She is a licensed therapist and founder of Exalt the Light, which is a virtual therapy practice which was founded to help people gain insight, acceptance, and empowerment to get to a place of healing. She has a passion for healing and helping people create, obviously, really great relationships with themselves, but other people. So this is my first therapy related episode, which is so crazy because a lot of our episodes deal about mental health, but we never actually had an episode about therapy, the importance of going to therapy, all of the above. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that welcome.
Yes.
Yes, Exalt the Light.
Ooh, I'm excited. We were joking earlier too. We were like, we both use our hands a lot too. If y'all see us going crazy with our hands, just let it happen.
Let it happen.
But always, guys, you know we like to get into the guests first, what they bring to the table, why I've invited them here today. So let's learn a little more about you before we get into the topic for today. You graduated from Hampton University. You got your bachelor's in psychology, and then afterwards you got your graduate degree in clinical mental health counseling. So for you, was because you always talk about on your sites, in your content, you have this passion for helping people in that healing journey. Are you someone that's always known that you wanted to get your counseling degree? Is this something that happened later in life? Or is there one moment that you were like, okay, I know this is meant for me? Or is it something that you're like, no, this is what God has given to me as my talent, as my gift? What's that look like for you?
Oh, I always love that question, right?
Yes.
Because my first answer would be, I always knew it was a talent and gift.
Yeah.
And the talent and gift was to help people.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you hear about those people where it's like, everybody always comes to me. People feel safe talking to me. That was me, literally all of my life. And my mom, she actually worked in a school as a school counselor, but it's more of working with the kids that needed extra support. So not like your guidance counselor.
Yeah.
So I grew up seeing her do that, from substance abuse things to working with all the teenagers, teen pregnancy groups, and things that she would bring me and my brother to sometimes. And she would tell me, well, Imani, don't do this unless you're going to go all the way.
Yep.
So for me, typical with most people, you go be a doctor, do this and do that. Mm-hmm. So initially I was like, okay, I'm going to be a pediatrician.
Yeah.
What was I thinking? I don't do fluids.
You said that is too much schooling for me, please.
I was dedicated to it literally through high school, knowing I don't like math like that. And I did a little, I guess you call it a little internship my senior year of high school, as a candy striper in the hospital.
What is that?
In Newport, I'm from Newport News, Virginia, by the way. But in Newport News, they have you can go in pretty much cleaning up, doing what the nurses didn't feel like doing, cleaning up after patients.
You're talking about fluids,
and I said, this isn't for me. But I still said, you know what? I'm going to be that doctor because I want to do that.
Yeah.
And went my freshman year at Hampton, taking all those bio classes. And I'm like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
Yes, I could stress myself out to do something I don't enjoy. Mm-hmm. Let me do what comes natural. And if I'm being honest, and I think a lot of people can relate to that spaces, I wasn't doing what came natural because of what was told to me.
Yes.
So when I made the decision, despite what anybody had to say, I'm changing my major to psychology. I did that my sophomore year, and it was the best decision I could have made. Yes. I jumped right in. I was like, yes, this is home. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is natural. Yeah. So I would definitely say a mix between God-given, this is what I'm called to, very passionate about it, and just really making a decision to go after it. Because the reality is, people who are in my field, they know this is not something that you come out where money is just there. You really have to be passionate and do the work and go through the process to be fully licensed or in any level as a mental health professional. So that's a little bit about that.
An actual passion for it. That's true. Because my sister-in-law too, she's a counselor, and she's like, there's not a lot of money in it necessarily, but she feels so fulfilled. That's what matters at the end of the day too. And I love that you really trusted your intuition with that? Because a lot of people would have been like, let me just push through to med school. I'm not liking these fluids in these chemistry classes, but I need to get it. But something in you felt like this is informing. You obviously found your path too.
Yes.
I know a big thing for you too is like creating that safe environment for people to feel safe to express their emotions. That a lot of that safe zone that a lot of people I don't think necessarily have growing up. You mentioned that your mom obviously was working in these schools and creating these environments for other people. So how did her influence on you and just maybe family in general play a role into you wanting to create these spaces for other people too?
Love that question. So yes, I shared a little bit about my mom, but definitely my family background. Seeing my mom do the work, but also being in my family, like, something's not right. I don't know exactly what the something is, but just looking at extended family, certain parts of my inner family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, having family members that actually struggle with mental illness, like schizophrenia and bipolar disorders and just your normal everyday anxiety and depression and not really knowing what it is. And you see that around you and you see certain behaviors and you're like, And I was always that kid that was like, yeah, I need to understand what this is about. I need to understand what causes people to behave in the ways that they do, which led me, I would say, in grad school. And I actually went to Regent grad school. So Hampton undergrad and Regent University grad. And I was in my trauma class. And that was really where I felt like I got my footing and understood, like, okay, I'm going to be a trauma therapist because that's the root of most of our behaviors, our experiences, our environments. Sometimes what we don't have, what we didn't get. I think those are the biggest things that people miss. Thankfully, I would say my mom, she did create environments for us to express our feelings and talk through things. But the reality is predominantly, my mom was a single parent mom. So when you grow up in that, her stress, you would see how that impact me and my brother. But she did try her best to give us safe places and explain to us the importance of being bold and speaking up and expressing our feelings, even if sometimes
she was dealing with her own shit
right,
too.
she was dealing with her own stuff for sure. And so that's a little bit more about that piece and just the impact of families. I know so many people can relate to that. I see it every day in my work. And I say all the time, my job, and it's not necessarily sad, but it's that place of empathy for me because in what I do, literally I help people be protected from other people.
That I never thought about it like that. Like, you obviously take on so much as a therapist. These people are coming to you, they're talking to you about their traumas, their histories, things that they have going on in their week. It can seem maybe surface level in some situations to someone else, but can feel like the deepest thing that person's ever been through in their life. Are you someone that has a therapist of your own too, to kind of help not distance yourself away from those emotions, because that's a part of your job, but to not carry that home with you and have that in your life as well? Do you go to therapy yourself? Because I know a lot of therapists are like, I have my own therapist. You think I'm dealing with my own shit and then other people's shit and then not having my own thing? What does that look like for you in your day-to-day life?
I'm going to tell you my thoughts on that. I absolutely, currently, do I have a therapist? No.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain a little bit more as to why. So yes, I have gone to therapy before. Particularly in my program, they required us to go to therapy. As a therapist, there are some times where people need therapists extended, ongoing. And there's some times where you do your 90-day period or a year and you're able to move on. But the goal of therapy is to get the tools to be able to have the tool belt to continue to navigate life.
Got it.
So as a therapist that at this time does not have a therapist. Now, if I needed, if I got to that point, absolutely. I would say I'm thankful to have my own tool belt, which is what I talk to my clients about all the time. It's like, listen, and I feel the importance of being relatable and connecting with them and helping them understand what I am teaching you, I do. So it's really not for me that attitude of like, I don't need somebody because I'm a therapist. No, that's not real. We're humans. So a lot of therapists do need therapists, and I have therapist friends and people who I know who still have therapists. But for me, I intentionally do the work every day and use my tool belt. And in some ways, by default, working with other people is a constant healing thing for me. I'm like constantly restoring and and then community. I'm thankful to have if I need to, I can call people if I need to just talk about something. If I need them to be a me for me, 100%. I need them to be a me for me. They'll do it. My friends are like, "What you need me to turn it on?" Yeah,
yes,
girl, turn
it on.
I do.
I do actually.
Right. So being thankful for those spaces. So I would say when people come out of therapy or if they're at that place where they're like, you know what, I got my tools, because here's the thing, life is going to life. There are waves. You got to learn to ride the waves. I use this analogy often where it's like, all of us have a life jacket on.
Yeah.
That's life.
Yeah.
A lot of us are like here sinking up under the life jacket.
Yeah.
The goal is for it to be right here and you just kind of floating, or you can lay back.
I want to be on my back, relax, drinking my hand. Yeah.
And I love when my clients are like, Imani, I'm on my back. I'm like, let's go.
I like
let's
that.
go. Right. Because that's when you know you are doing the work and doing the thing.
Yes.
So, but sometimes life will have us there, but your tool belt, that's your life jacket.
Yeah.
If you got your tool belt, you're going to stay up. You're not going to drown. Mm-hmm. You might go down a little bit.
My neck is popping under. I got some water in my nose.
Bobbing a little bit, right? But you're not going to drown. And I try to help people understand that, because sometimes it can be crippling to people if they don't understand, like, you can't be so dependent on your therapist that you can't depend on yourself. Right? So you want to set them up for success. I tell people all the time, I don't need your money that bad.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Yes.
You're good. If you need to check in quarterly, I'm here.
I got you. But you want them to be able to get to a point where they don't necessarily need to see you every single week and have that level of codependency.
Absolutely.
Too. How often that's so interesting. I never thought about that codependency point. How often do you feel like a lot of clients will enter therapy with the mindset that this is someone that they are going to be dependent on? And how does a therapist create that boundary to be like, okay, now you're doing too much. You're calling me at 12 a.m. I need to relax a little bit. I don't even know how you got my personal number. How does a therapist create those boundaries, and how can people go in with expectations that the therapist is not supposed to be that life jacket for you every single time?
Yes. Yeah. So I make that clear at the top.
Ooh, okay.
And your informed consent, it reads very clear what those boundaries are, and I also will talk about it, right? Yeah. And I think the biggest things is just respecting, like, my hours, like when I'm available. If it's an emergency, please call 911, call 988. Because the reality is there's nothing I can do in those emergency states. You know, I do let my clients know if it's something where if they need to see me unexpectedly and their appointment might be Friday and they're like, I'm okay with that. If they reach out and I have availability, I'm open to that. However, like I said, when it's emergency, do what you need to do.
Yes.
But I just talk to them about just respecting that boundary as far as communication. Yep. I let them know the best ways to communicate with me if you need to reschedule. Honestly, I will be honest with you, most of my clients respect that.
Good.
And I think mainly because of the population I work with now. You know, I have a lot of experience. I worked at homeless shelters and schools and things of that nature, but currently in private practice, I work with professionals and everyday people, you know, people that are similar to me that I might see out when I'm out. So they understand and respect those things, and if there is something, they know how to reach out, but they definitely respect those boundaries, and I appreciate that. So I don't have to have those conversations too much extended beyond that. But it's important for therapists to have those conversations.
Yes. And I like that you made it known from the beginning, like this is what our relationship is going to look like, so people can go in, and if you do see there's an issue, then a therapist, I'm sure, can take a step back and being like, maybe I'm not the right person for you to work with too. And you're talking about your private practice so much, and I mentioned it earlier, Exalt the Light. So what made you want to start your own private practice? It's virtual, correct?
Yes.
So I'm excited to get into that later in the episode about virtual versus in person and what that can look like for people as well. But how has this like entrepreneurial mindset affected you? What have you learned about yourself starting your own practice and having this entrepreneur background? That's such a cool thing that I'm really excited to talk about that and what that's looked like for you too.
Yeah, so I would say even before, because being virtual, I think COVID like expedited the process of being able to say, oh my God, I can start my business because I can do it from this video platform.
That makes sense, 2020.
But even before that, it was always like something I aspired to do. I know in my field, and I love this field, but the reality is I consider myself a decolonizer in a sense. I respect ethics. I understand how we're supposed to operate as therapists. But when you worked in certain environments and you've seen certain things, it's like, I want to do things ethically and culturally competent.
Yeah.
And also being able to be myself.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Like, I can be me. I can show up, wear what I want, and my client's gonna be like, "Hey, girl," And
said I got my sweats on. I'm relaxed. Absolutely, yes.
Right. So I think for me, that is what I appreciate most, and being able to step out into that journey. The biggest reason why I did it, because it's like, I've worked in enough places where I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. I'm definitely the one that I have something to say. That was me in the meetings.
You don't mind speaking up, which is important, though.
I didn't mind speaking up, but they definitely had no problems ignoring my hand, because they knew I was going to say something that they probably didn't want to hear.
They were like, anybody else? And you're like, okay, meeting's over.
Yeah, because you see a lot of places, and that's similar in a lot of different businesses and all types of jobs, where it's sometimes just about numbers. It's not about people. And for me, it's about the people. I actually want to see my clients thrive.
Yes.
I'm not here to see how many times I can see you. I want to see you say, wow, what you told me at the top, but where I can get, I'm there.
Yeah.
That's what it's about for me. Like, so when with Exalt the Light, I remember when I was coming up with the business name, and I was just like, oh, I need something that represents me, that represents what I want from my clients. Yes. And it's just like, oh, Exalt the Light. It's a brand, right? It's a thing. And when you hear it, it's like, you think about, I remember when I was preparing my website and like writing out things, and I was talking about like the darkness that a lot of times we feel, but it's the inner light inside of there that even in that darkness it shines. And I want people to understand that, like, yes, we've all gone through things, me included.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's what helps me be relatable for a lot of my clients, and building rapport is being human. That's the biggest thing, is that
connection
human.
there. Yeah.
And I think that helps people to feel safe to open up and say, okay. Like, they come in like, I've never told anybody this much.
And you're like, that's what I'm here for.
Right. Yeah. And your first appointment is like your assessment. And that's kind of where I call it like the framework that I get from clients. Like, we fill in the rest of the picture later, but right now let me get the framework. Yeah. And they're like, I've never. And I'm like, I'm glad you feel safe. I'm glad that you feel that you can be heard here, that you're seen here. Yes. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
I love that. And I love that's your mission. And I love that's everything you do with your business too, because you will see, I have definitely been to some therapists before, and I've spoken to some friends where you feel like it's a checkbox for them. Okay, another session here. They're not even following up with you about your next appointment. It just seems they're forgetting everything that you told them last time, which is fine. I know you're meeting with a lot of people, but the fact that you're telling me people were coming to you even in their first session and were telling you things that they may have never opened up to anybody, it just shows that you're obviously good at what you do, but also you just have that presence that's so necessary for people to sit in those uncomfortable emotions and then actually speak about them too. Amazing.
I love feelings.
Me too. I used to not. We'll dive into it, but
I'm an emotions girl. I was telling someone the other day, I said, listen, sometimes it's okay to just slide down the wall.
Yeah.
Slide down the wall and cry. Yeah. Because if you don't slide down the wall, you're suppressing it, which creates depression. Slide down the wall. Because guess what? After you slide down, you're going to go wipe the tears.
Yep.
You might be a little tired. You're going to rest better, though, because you've gotten that stress off of you.
Yes.
And you can do your next day.
Yes.
But we're so avoiding the feelings when we need to learn how to just normalize human reactions.
Yes. Why do you think people are so uncomfortable sitting with those feelings? Do you think a lot of the time it stems from just familial upbringing? I know for me, I used to be someone before I started therapy back in, I want to say 2022. So a few years now. Yeah. And I've seen so much change in myself. And I think podcasting before that allowed me to open up, because I'm now sharing a little more about my life. And I used to always think that and this is so cliche, but truly was one of those people that felt like not talking about my emotions and opening up made me stronger because I'm there for everybody. Yep, but then I'd be sitting in my room depressed as hell, sad, crying, distracting myself from whatever was coming up. And I know for me, a lot of the time, it's just the family that I grew up in. I love my family, but we were a household who held everything in and then was super reactive and blew up when it got to its peak instead of just talking about things from the beginning. Why do you think the average person really struggles with sitting in those uncomfortable emotions and opening up to someone too?
Yeah. Well, I feel like you literally just explained it. I feel like that's one of the main reasons. Definitely our upbringing. Being a parent, I tell parents all the time, even though I'm not a parent yet, I've worked with a lot of kids. I still work with parents. A lot of my clients are parents. Yeah. I tell them, I say, think about when you parent your child, think about what you felt like as a child and what you needed.
Wow.
If you think about that by itself, it helps you parent better.
Yeah. Wow.
So just even from that space, like you shared, that is a very common reality for people. It's like, people say, "Oh, it's always interesting when I do assessments and I ask clients about like their family and stuff. They're like, "Oh, I had a good childhood," and I'm like, "Great, tell me more."
And then stuff slowly starts coming out.
So as I give psychoeducation around things, they're like, "Oh, wait," and it's like, no, it's not saying that it was bad. It's just saying like I said earlier, sometimes what you didn't get, right? So like you just shared. Your family was there, but they didn't know how, right? You think about the generations of not knowing how. As a Black woman, as a woman of color, we didn't have time and capacity to do that. You had to keep going. At least you were told that. Who was going to sit down and listen to you cry about this segregation and these terrible things that are happening to you? You think about our men, our women. So you think about that generational pattern of that happening. And then every now and then you had that parent or grandparent that learn, okay, well, let me at least listen. Let me ask, right? And I think the biggest thing I tell parents all the time, care about your child's world.
Wow.
But a lot of times parents don't have it, so they can't give it to their kids. So if you're telling me to not have a tantrum, but you've had an adult tantrum just yesterday.
And it looks maybe differently than a kid screaming there, but like maybe your tantrum's going to your room, shutting your door, and not speaking to anybody for a full day.
Icing your family out, 100%. Shutting your family out. When you think about attachment styles, that is what creates those types of things. So that is definitely a baseline one. And then it's really helping children learn how to feel their big emotions. You know, I think about my friends, and I'm like, I'm the auntie, right? All my friends, I love their babies and their kids, and I'm just like, when they come in, I'm like, all right, did you get down on their level? Did you hold their hands? Like, and just giving them feedback and seeing like sometimes you see it as small, but they see it as huge.
It's everything in their life right now when you're 3, 4, 5.
That's all they know. Right. And I feel like that's where a lot of people struggles, because they're like, well, I grew up with this, and it's like, but their experiences are not your experiences.
It's so different.
Completely different. So yeah, it just goes back to learning for yourself how to honor your emotions, understand your emotions, understand that your emotions are physical. Right? Wow. Tapping into that, being able to say, when my chest, that means I might be a little anxious. Being able to call that emotion out.
Yes.
Teaching the people around you to do that. But it takes you learning so you can teach other people.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the short.
No, I love that. And I love that you covered the generational trauma. I know that's a big part of your practice, is that generational trauma point. I think, especially within the Black community, where looking at mental health is such a taboo, and you don't need depression, you need God. It's like, no, I need therapy and maybe some medication too.
Okay,
like,
right?
correct? We can do a little bit of both, right? Like, definitely. So I love that. And thanks for opening up. And I think that is a perfect segue into our episode, guys. Guys, today we are talking about, you already see us talking about it. We already got into it a little bit, but today we are talking about the importance of going to therapy, why it's important, the benefits, why some people might be fearful of going to therapy, and even being vulnerable with someone that they may consider a stranger per se. So this person wrote in and they said, I've been wanting to try therapy for a while now, but honestly, I'm freaked out. I grew up in a family that didn't really talk about feelings, and I've noticed I tend to shut down even when I'm going through stuff. How am I supposed to start therapy, find the right therapist, and actually open up to a total stranger? Does therapy even work? Okay, I love this topic because I was someone for so long that struggled with my own mental health issues, but was like, I don't need therapy, I'll get through it. And then eventually I was like, oh, I need this immediately. And I feel like, thank goodness I have. But you were kind of talking earlier about this, this toolbox, and how once you have the skills for yourself, that you don't necessarily need to go to therapy in some situations. Are you someone that believes that everyone should try therapy at least once? Or does it just go back to where you're at in your life, how you grew up, what traumas you're going through, even if it's just like a light, stressful week at work, but you feel like you need to talk to someone? When should someone go to therapy versus learning to kind of build that toolbox and those skills up for themselves?
That's a great question. So the first thing that came to mind, I'm not gonna say I jokingly say this because this is actually true. And the reality is they don't really want us to know this truth. So it makes me think about, when a mother has a child, or in general, when you come into this world, they make sure you have a doctor, right?
Yeah.
They make sure that mother has a doctor, right?
Yeah.
I go as far as to believe that people should start therapy. Even mothers should be in therapy if they're not yet.
Yeah.
Because when you think about most autoimmune diseases and physical disorders is because of unresolved trauma and chronic stress. So
wow, true. Yeah.
If it's important for me to have a doctor, why is it not important for me to make sure my mind is in the right place? So even if you're not going to full-blown therapy, like right out the bat, maybe an assessment to see, is this something that this person needs?
Yeah.
Is this child in a situation where they have something like ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And doctors in certain areas do that, but it's like after you do that, do you connect them with the resources, right? So you know that these children have this background, you know that they've experienced certain stressors and traumas, but are you giving them the resources? They want to make sure we have a doctor, but they don't make sure our mind is in the right place. Ooh. But if they did that medically, it wouldn't be the same.
Wow. Because if your mind's right, then all these other issues that they eventually would need a doctor for.
Exactly.
Okay. I see.
Exactly.
I see.
So I would say that is a very real, I stand on that very firmly.
Yeah.
What I noticed with most people is that they come to therapy when it's like some type of crisis, right? Whether it's grief, a relationship situation.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the main things. Some having a relationship, somebody broke up, they heartbroken.
Yep. Something
or
in the family.
A crisis.
Yeah.
Grief, something of that nature, and then they get there and they realize all these other things. And it's like, yeah, this is your presenting problem, but we got work to do.
Yeah, you're like, you just had a breakup, but everything you said about that breakup, like, this is so much deeper than that.
So much deeper. And that's where I get excited.
You're
I'm like,
let me do
you're
my
here
work
for this, but we're going to gather you all the way up. And I love that.
I love that. And for people too, and that's such a good point too. Obviously, people spend so much time on the physical part of their bodies and the mental is definitely on the back burner. A lot of people don't start going to therapy until late 20s, 30s, later. Some people never gone to therapy. I think my parents maybe went once and then said, "Oh, we're good." And I said, "No, y'all could use a few more sessions. Y'all could use a few more sessions."
Right.
However, I think a lot of people will depend on their family and their friends in life almost to the point where they're using that friend or family member as a therapist. What are the issues with turning to that one person in your life who is not a registered or licensed therapist, counselor all the time too? I think you kind of mentioned growing up, you were that person that everyone would come up to and you would kind of give your advice on things. Did that ever get exhausting for you? And what are the issues with people using their support system, which they're supposed to be there as your support system, but all the time as that therapist role?
Yeah. So this leads me to my favorite word, which I've shared before, but boundaries, right? Actually, this is actually a topic I talk about a lot in sessions because a lot of people struggle with that, like with telling people, not necessarily no, but having those conversations with friends or family who do not have their own outlets, won't go to therapy, but they want to blow up their phone and trauma dump all day or come with gossip and all the things that are just, and I tell them, I'm saying, okay, so you're constantly telling me about this, which means it's an issue. Yeah. What are you going to do? Well, I don't want to hurt, the typical response. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want them to think I don't care. I say, listen, if that is your friend, if that's your family and they care about you, they will be okay with you setting a boundary that you need. And sometimes the boundary is simple as, hey girl, I love you. Yeah. And I support you. But you've been calling me about this relationship that you were choosing to continue to participate in over the last few months. Okay, we're having the same conversations. Have you considered talking to a therapist, maybe seeing a therapist? Yeah. And I laugh sometimes, like, I try to send them your stuff, and I'm like, set me up. Right. I'm just like, but sometimes people won't go, but I think they won't because they still have those people who won't set the boundary. So I think the like I said, the answer to that is learning how to advocate for yourself. Yes. There's nothing wrong with being available to a certain extent. Obviously, if someone's in crisis, I would never want someone to feel like they couldn't call me.
Don't call me at all. Right.
But also if you aren't doing what you need to do and you want to make that someone else's issue and literally it's almost parasitic. Yeah. Like you're latching on and just sucking so much out of them. And it's like, and people usually who do that don't honor boundaries baseline. Yeah. They don't even recognize. And then when you draw that line, you don't even hear from them no more because you were only beneficial when you could create that space.
Exactly. And now what? It may not even be a friend because almost like using you in that sense. And we've all had a friend like that before where you set some sort of boundary with and then never hear from them again. And that just shows, I was just doing a video about that earlier. It shows where your friendship actually really lasted too. You brought up such a good point of how people may not go to therapy because they already have that support system in their regular life. It could be a friend that you use as that therapist. And we know that you shouldn't be doing that. But people are like, oh, I got my at-home therapist. I got my mom. But it's like, no, your mama don't know all those different skills.
No.
What are some other reasons you feel like people may not want to go to therapy? I think for me, for a while, I was the person that was afraid that if I start with this one thing, I know all this other stuff in my body, in my mind that I've been holding in for 20 plus years is going to come out.
Yes.
So for me, it was just the fear of seeing myself in a different light and honestly being vulnerable to a stranger and not appearing as this like perfect person who has their stuff together. What are some other reasons why you feel like people might be a little lenient to starting therapy and going to therapy?
I think the point you just made is a really big one. When you think about the healing journey in general, I mean, and that's such a broad thing, it's scary.
Yeah.
Because when you are used to operating the way you've been operating, even if it's dysfunctional.
Yep.
And you're like, you want me to go to a person to tell me what I already know. I don't need anybody to tell me anything. And it's like, but therapy is a place where that person mirrors back to you who you are. I tell my clients all the time, I am literally alongside your journey. This is your journey. I can't make you do anything. You can't, because they'll say, I don't want to disappoint you. You can't disappoint me. This is your journey. Yes. I am here to help you navigate that. And that's it.
Yeah.
But like I said, the fear of, if I talk about these things, am I going to lose it? Am I going to crumble? Am I going to be worse than I already am? And not realizing that actually, and I will say this, there are proper ways to help people work through traumas and things. And that's why as therapists, we're trained to do that.
Exactly.
I will say I've heard horror stories where it hasn't gone that way with some therapists. So going back to even the advice that the person sent in is making sure you find the right therapist that can help you with your needs. And I have like a rule of thumb that I tell people. They're like, well, Imani, like, I know I can't work with you because I know you, but what would you recommend? I say, listen, do some research. You're going to have to be intentional. Sometimes I give referrals, but I say pick 3 and make sure you do a consultation with them. Most therapists offer consultations.
Okay.
I definitely do because I want to make sure you're also a good fit for me.
Exactly. You don't even think about it from the other side because the therapist might be like, I'm not really vibing with this person either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also people have different lanes and niches and things and spaces that they work in. So it's like, if you're coming to me with this, that's not what I do. I would want to get you to the best person that can do that.
Yes.
So do consultations with your therapist. Pick the one that you feel best fit. Ask questions. I have some questions that I tell people to ask. Ask them, are they trauma informed?
Yes, yes.
Ask them, what approaches that they use. Like I tell them all these things. Make sure you ask this. Don't be afraid. Tell them what you have going on and ask them, is that something they can actually assist you with? Some therapists are really more, what do you call it? I'm losing my train of thought, but pretty much they're more focused in the present, right? They can't help you. They don't do trauma work.
Got it.
They're not going to dig up anything like that.
Like, here you are and how we can move forward.
Yeah, how can we move forward? And that's okay for some things, and that works for some people. But sometimes it is things they have to dig up and work through.
Definitely.
So I've had clients that come like, yeah, I've been in therapy for all these years. And I'm like, wow, did you learn any of this? And they're like, no. I'm like, I'm
really?
always so shocked. I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So asking the questions, I think, is the biggest thing. And not being afraid of that. And you mentioned like that that fear of the judgment. That's the cool thing about a therapist. Well, it's supposed to be the cool thing about therapists. It's like, we're the space where you can come and be who you are.
Yes.
Be you. When my clients cuss, they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, please talk. Like, this is your space. Say what you want to say. Like, this is where you get to be you. You don't have to put on a mask. You don't have to show up as anybody else but yourself. You can cry. Don't hold back the tears. Let it out.
Yes. I was going to ask you, you're like bringing up stuff I was going to ask you. I love this right now. I was going to ask you about the people pleaser point because I'm someone who struggled in therapy before, not necessarily, and I think a lot of people, not necessarily in like a narcissistic way, but you just want to show that you're growing and your therapist is helping and you want to appear almost like perfect, which is obviously something that no one can really do. How can someone who is a people pleaser in therapy just try to remember that your therapist is there as that guide to help you, but you don't need to have that mask on? What are some things that they can ask themselves or tell themselves if they start a story and they're like, well, that's not exactly how it happened, but I want to keep pretending that I'm like the good one in this situation, or I took what we learned in therapy last week and applied it, even if you stayed quiet really in that moment in real life. How can people begin to not people please with their therapist? What are some easy step-by-step things they can tell themselves or just remember during therapy not to do that? Because I've definitely been the person that's like, I'm gonna leave this one little bit out because I don't want to look crazy in this situation.
Well, I will first say, if you aren't honest in therapy, the therapist can't help you fully.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I tell clients at the top.
Yep.
Because I can only help someone based on what they present.
Yeah.
But and actually, let me be honest. As a therapist that's been doing this work for a while, they might present with something, but I can see where their underlying things are. But that's my job, where, again, with the guiding and helping you get to these other things. But I believe in the importance of, like, obviously, like I said, that rapport building in the beginning, and also creating that space. I tell my clients, if there's something you need me to know, ask me.
Yep.
Or tell me, if you have a question, ask me. I check in quite regularly.
Yeah.
Right. I'll ask, like, hey, how do you feel you're doing? Where are you at?
Like that.
Are we on track? Because I find a lot of times, sometimes that doesn't always happen. And clients, because they're still learning these skills, they don't feel bold enough or confident enough to ask those questions.
True.
So they'll just kind of go with it, like, I thought this was how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And when I'm like, oh no, and people have had those experiences, unfortunately. So, like, I believe in checking in, like, where are we at? How do you feel? Like, when they come in and say they're good, I'm like, oh, what does good actually mean?
Let's, like, get an actual emotion
Can
on
we
there.
Get a feeling word? They're like, here you go. I'm like, yes, let's get a feeling word. What do you actually? And they're like, no, I'm
the
actually.
wheel. I know we all have one of those.
Right.
I'm like,
love
okay,
the feelings
happy
wheel.
and then going
right.
Yeah.
And I say, do you want me to pull out my wheel? Let's go. Let's get it on the screen. But really, I think that's the key, though, is telling your clients the importance of being honest. Because, again, this is your journey. This is your investment as well on your journey.
Yes.
So make it a worthwhile investment.
Yeah.
But then also, like, don't be afraid to really say where you're at or what you're feeling. And if that therapist asks you, and don't be afraid to speak up and ask.
Yes.
I've heard of situations where people will say, oh, well, the last therapist didn't do this. I said, did you say anything? Well, no, I just thought you got to speak up, right? And yes, you're learning these skills.
Yeah.
But if you don't we're human too. So we can't know.
We can't read your mind.
But that's one thing I feel really works, is just checking in and allowing space for the client to really explore that and practice being honest and open about where they're at in their journey.
100%. And then they do have to take it onto themselves to be vulnerable. And honestly, I love what you said earlier, because sometimes you might be talking to a therapist that you're not vibing with and you may not want to open up to them. It might be an energy thing. It might be something they said that just threw you off that you can't get over. So that compatibility piece is really important.
Yeah.
And you mentioned 3 consultations, and I've heard that before. Is it something, when I started therapy, I forget who told me this, if it was a friend, but she's like, therapy is like dating. Not every single therapist that you're going to talk to, you're going to vibe with. So go to 3. And it was my 3rd one that I actually like and I still go to. My first one, she was this white woman who was great, but a lot of the issues and insecurities that I was dealing with was growing up in these predominantly white areas and experiences. And so I feel like she wasn't able to relate to me as a Black person. So I was like, I think I got to take a step back from her. My second therapist was wonderful, but she was a little too direct with me. I love, like, call me out, but, like, don't make me be, like, crying. You know what I mean? I need a little bit of sensitivity, girl. A little sensitivity on it. A little. And she was pregnant. She came out later. So I'm like, maybe she just had a lot going on. My third therapist is amazing. So do you feel like that 3 therapist rule, continuing to not, settle? You don't want to settle with someone that you're like, oh, they're fine, but I don't want to, keep going to anybody else. How important it is to find that person that you are compatible with, you feel like you can open up with, and not settle for just the first therapist that you meet and see.
Yeah. Unless it's a great connection.
Because
honestly, I'll have some clients come in their consultation and I'll even say, are you going to consult with a few other people?
Yeah.
No, you're great. Like,
I love you.
I'm so like, no, I don't need to talk to anybody else. And my clients coming out, like, I just feel so blessed that you were my first therapist. Because like you said, like, everybody doesn't hit the jackpot with their therapist on their first go round of going to therapy.
Yep.
So no shade, but most people hit the jackpot when they come to me. Again, I'm passionate about what I do, and I've seen the other things.
Yeah.
I've heard the horror stories.
Yes.
I'm like, woo. But I feel like, it is definitely like dating. That is something people say all the time. If you can avoid actually, and I guess I can ask you that question. Did you do consults with them?
Yes,
You did.
I did for the first.
Okay.
Is that when they're just like, this
Like
is
the
everything that
15
you're
minute-
dealing with, and
Yeah,
blah, blah.
tell me what brought you in. How did you find out about me?
Yes, all
Yeah.
three, which was actually very helpful because
Yeah.
I'm sure if one of them was like, I can't really deal with that, they would have put like, moved me
Yeah.
up. But they all kind of dealt with anxiety and some stuff that I was
Gotcha.
dealing with, so it made sense.
Gotcha. And as you got in there, you're like, yeah, not quite, not what I thought.
Not what I thought. I
Gotcha.
think I'm such a big vibes person and energy.
Yes.
The first two, I felt like I couldn't open up to them fully. And that's something that I've struggled with, and I have to take accountability for that on my own. I do struggle with not presenting this perfect image of myself. I'm just a perfectionist. I've always been that way. But the third person, it just felt so different. I just felt like I could immediately open up, and she just felt like almost like a grandmother to me. I don't know. She
it's
felt
like a
like family. It just
yeah.
felt like someone I could be like,
Yeah.
okay, I know I'm going to sound crazy when I say this, but listen to me. And she's like, oh, you're crazy. And I love it. Like, I love that.
Yes.
So exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing is when trying to find the right person.
Yeah.
That's why I say asking those questions are good, and like
Yep.
the energy and the vibe that they give off, personality. Like
Yeah.
again, like I said, I am myself.
Yeah.
I'm like my consults, hey, good morning.
Uh-huh.
What's up? Like, welcome. And I'm like, how did you find, like, that's my energy.
Yeah.
Even though it's early when I do my consults, I give the energy. I'm like, and I tell them, this is me.
Yeah.
How do you feel now? Like,
Yeah.
I start that rapport building even in those stages,
Yes.
whether they work with me or not,
Yeah.
right? So they can feel, and I tell them, hey, even if you can't work with me, like, because I'm primarily private pay, so sometimes I do have to refer out because certain clients aren't able to work with me, and they're just like, man, I'm so sad, and I'm like, it's okay. I send them resources, so I tell them, don't give up.
Yeah.
Please find somebody. I know I wasn't the fit because of these particular reasons, and I think that's the biggest thing, rather than, well, nice meeting you, sending you on your way.
It shows that you care.
It shows that I
actually.
care.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in what people can experience when you're doing a consultation or you're having a therapist. It's like, how do they show up? Do you see their
Yes.
humanity? Do you see, are they authentic?
Yeah.
Are they giving robot? Are they giving checking the box, as you mentioned earlier? Like,
Yeah.
as a therapist, I wouldn't want to go to a therapist like that. I think even when I was in college and I was a server, right? I used to think, I'm going to serve, I serve people like I would want to be served.
Yeah.
So in anything that I do it in a way that I would want to receive it.
I love that. I love that.
So if I'm a therapist and if I had to come to me, would I want to come to me? And if my answer is yes, I'm on the right
doing
track.
what I'm doing, and my answer is no. I need to switch some stuff up.
Exactly. You know, some people will really have to say no.
I've been to some that I'm like,
they would not come to
you might need to choose a new profession, girl. I don't know about this for you.
Yes, it's a real thing.
And I feel your energy even it's
Yeah.
you're obviously so authentic, you're so genuine, and that for people that are so nervous about beginning therapy, that is all they really want. They don't
Yeah.
want someone that's like, oh, okay, we're gonna check, we'll see. It's like you want someone who's gonna keep it real with you, but they really are creating a safe space for them
Yes.
to talk about whatever that they
Yes.
need to. I wanted to ask you too, how do you deal with, I was just seeing a video about this the other day. I found it so interesting, the self-aware client. So the client that comes in and they know exactly what's going on in their lives, why they are the way that they are, where their issues stem from. But the video kind of expanded into this person might be using a lot of logic for their issues and everything that they're dealing with, but not really feeling those emotions. How do you deal with someone that it seems like they have all the answers as to what their issues are and why they are feeling that certain way or thinking those certain things, but they're still in therapy. So obviously they're there for a reason. How do you deal with that self-aware person?
I kind of say what you just said in a different way.
Okay.
Right? In the sense of like, you're here for a reason.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I love that you're so aware because again, awareness is the first step. You got to be aware to do some of the work.
Yeah.
So in some ways it helps me, right? In the sense of like, I'm not doing as much psychoeducation. I might just be expanding on the psychoeducation.
Yeah.
So depending on what they're coming in with and they have awareness of it, I'm asking more meaningful things of like, and it just kind of helps you move, not gonna say a little quicker, but it's a different angle in the sense of like, compared to a client is never talking about, they don't have, like, they're blindsided about all of their things.
Yeah.
Compared to a person that's like, no, like, this is what's going on.
Yep.
I got this, my family like this, and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, as you stated, they're not connected to the experience emotionally. They can just talk about it, which is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, you ever seen people just talk about their trauma? It's like the most terrifying
It's like they're
things.
telling you like what they got for lunch that day. And
Yeah.
you're like, girl, what?
There's
did
no
you go
emotion
through?
tied.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
no, there was no emotion or verbal verbalization of their experience in that type of connected way. So you have people like that. And then you have people where they do recognize and they'll say, I know this stuff, but I still need help because clearly I'm missing something. And I love that. And I'm like, yes. And that's why you're here. And I'm happy to help you figure out what those underlying things are, where you're getting stuck. And I think even like that's kind of like when you have therapists or coaches and different that come to therapy, like they're very aware.
Yeah.
But they just haven't taken the time to really do the work and sit down and be held accountable to that.
True.
So yeah, I think it looks different depending on the person, but definitely it's just, I talk to them and I'll just say, hey, tell me more about this. What do you want to do with this?
Yes.
You're aware of this. Why are you stuck now? What's the wedge here?
What's that disconnect
right.
there?
What is that? Right.
Yeah.
And they're usually able to talk about it, and what they don't see, I'm able to see and kind of help bring the disconnect back together.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful thing that you're able to do, because I have had friends, and I think I've even been in situations where you'll be saying something so traumatic and it's just so blank, and it's almost scary in a sense of like there should be some sort of emotion tied to that, even if you feel healed from that and it's no longer like sadness or anger or grief. It's like something a part of that too.
Yeah.
On the opposite end of that, so you have these people that might struggle talking about their emotions. You have these people that talk about very traumatic things and it seems like there's no emotions connected. And then on the opposite, you might have people that are so overcome with these emotions that they might feel a lot of shame or guilt from talking about these traumas that they've been through or situations where they've messed up or whatever that looks like. What would you like to say, or what advice can you give to someone who feels that sense of being a burden or shameful when they are speaking about those emotions and sharing that with someone else? Because for me, for the longest time, and I have so many friends and family members that would open up about something and then I would just shut down the next day. You're not going to see me. I'm napping until noon. I'm going to the library. You're not going to hear from me all day, because I just felt this overwhelming sense of, man, I am really messing up these people's lives, sharing this information about myself. I feel like I'm like dumping onto them, even though a lot of these conversations came up very organically and naturally. I just felt like very ashamed of the situation, but also almost like a bad friend for sharing these parts of myself that I usually don't show to people. What advice can you give to someone who may be struggling with that sense of shame or guilt for talking about themselves, even if it's not in the most positive light, because you still got to do that too?
Yeah, that's a good question. As you were talking, I'm like, great question, actually. I would say first, shame and guilt is one of the most challenging emotions to like really navigate and understand. And is really what keeps a lot of us stuck emotionally. I feel like when you think about shame and guilt at its core, you have so many other emotions that like come from that.
Yeah.
And how you show up. What I would say to that, to answer your question, to me, it's like eliminating the elephant in the room, right? So if I know I struggle with something, or I know I have to have an uncomfortable conversation, this is what I share with clients or anybody. Kind of just go ahead and put it on the table like, hey, actually, I'm really uncomfortable talking about this. And
I like that.
I'm really working. I'm trying to work on creating safe spaces. Are you okay with me sharing this with you?
I love
right.
that.
So you're both making sure that that person has the capacity to be able to listen to what you have to share. But also being honest with where you're at. I feel like when you just call that feeling out, it just takes the power from it that it can normally have.
Ooh,
So I think that's really huge. And it helps. I do it all the time. Like when I'm uncomfortable about something, or if I have to talk to my mom about something that we kind of got into it or whatever, I'm like, Mom, we got to have this talk. I'm uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable. We're going to talk about it. Let's just go ahead and call out the emotions and go there. And I think that really helps. And then, like I said, the biggest thing is that capacity. As we were talking about friendships earlier and having those appropriate boundaries, is it's important to have community, but also respect your community.
Yes.
Because sometimes someone may not have the capacity for that, or they may not be the friend for that. You also need to know your friends. If they haven't done the work, or you're afraid to tell them how to do the things that they need to do to be that safe place. I tell my clients all the time, if you're not going to tell people what you need for them to be safe, then stop going to them.
Oh, Come on.
That's direct, but I am like that.
Yes.
In that type of direct. Like,
yes.
because it's not safe for you to go to them, because every time you go, you're re-triggered. And if you're not going to have that conversation with this person that you love, a parent, a close friend, or whoever, and say, hey, I want to talk to you about things, but I can't, because when I do, this is how you respond to me.
Wow.
And because they love you, they should want to try to do the work. Right? Which is why boundaries work for you or against, or they actually always work for you. They might work against the other person.
Yeah.
But they should respect that and say, okay, well, what do I need to do? Because sometimes I just need you to listen.
Yep. You don't need the advice. You don't need your opinion on everything. I need you to just sit there and listen for a bit.
If I want your advice, I actually say, what do you think about it?
Exactly.
So asking for what you need and not being afraid to do that. But that is a lot of people's struggle, right? To actually ask for what they need and set their boundaries for those things.
Yeah. That is the most beautiful advice. I love just calling it out in the first place. And letting people know where you're at, because a lot of the time they may not have the capacity, and then you have to rethink about that relationship too. I think that's so good. We are almost out of time. Just last words of advice from you about this topic. Advice for this person who's nervous about going to therapy. What would you like to tell them?
I would like to tell them, listen, you have taken the first step to even think about starting your journey, and that is huge courage. So the fact that you were that courageous to start the journey, go for it. Don't be afraid to ask for help, to find a therapist, ask a friend to help you sit down and pick some people, but really go with your gut and who you choose. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. But this step is going to be life-changing for you. Find the right therapist, take the steps, because you honestly deserve it.
I love that advice. Thank you so much for being here, Imani. I'm I need to schedule another one with my therapist for this month after this. Please, you're amazing. Tell the people where they can find you. Obviously, you have a virtual practice too. I have so many more questions for you. I have to ask you at a different point. Tell the people where they can find you on social media. Obviously, your own practice too. Let them know where you're at and how they can be connected with you. So on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, I'm at Exalt the Light LLC, or Exalt the Light. So EXALTTHELIGHT. My website is exaltthelight.com. There'll be some things on the lookout, some other things in the works. So please follow me, and go to therapy. Find you a dope therapist. And
community.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Go to therapy. Like she said, if you feel like you need to do it, you know all the resources, and I can link them in my bio as well. But again, if you guys want advice on any topics like these, head to my website, www.unlicenssedpodcast.com, or my advice forum on my Instagram at unlicensed advice, and TikTok at unlicensed advice for more fun video content and everything from today.